Hi, I'm Kevin Keefe, editor of Trains Magazine, and welcome to On Location, our video series about great train watching spots around North America. This program is called Heart of the Wisconsin Central. We're going to show you WC's main line between Neenah and Waukesha, Wisconsin. You'll meet shippers and employees, you'll tour Shop's Yard, and you'll see the diesels and trains that make WC one of America's most colorful regional railroads. And watch for more in our series direct from the pages of Trains Magazine. And at the end of this program, see more about other great on-location tapes. And now, Heart of the Wisconsin Central.
You don't have to believe in reincarnation to understand the story of the Wisconsin Central Limited, but it helps. The railroad's first incarnation occurred in 1871 when the Wisconsin Central Railroad was incorporated to build a railroad from Neenah to Ashland, Wisconsin on the shore of Lake Superior. By 1886, the WC's empire reached south to Chicago, west to St. Paul, Minnesota, and north to Ashland. A serpentine main line through the streets of Oshkosh and a system map that bypassed Milwaukee didn't prevent the Northern Pacific from leasing the WC between 1890 and 1893. A year after it reached Superior, Wisconsin in 1908, the Wisconsin Central passed into the hands of the Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Sault Ste. Marie Railway, known locally as the Soo. Between 1909 and 1960, the Wisconsin Central endured as little more than a paper railroad. The only clue to its existence were tiny WC initials on some rolling stock and 4-digit road numbers on locomotives that otherwise looked like they belonged to the Soo. The railroad finally gave up the ghost on January 1, 1961, when the Soo absorbed the WC and the Duluth, South Shore, and Atlantic and emerged as the Soo Line Railroad Company. During the next quarter century, the Soo Line's image and business acumen reflected its largely rural territory, quiet and conservative. But railroading in the Soo's backyard was changing. The 1970 Burlington Northern merger had transformed two of Soo's competitors, Burlington Route and the Great Northern, into a super railroad that offered shippers expedited service through a wide range of gateways. The boom in western coal traffic matched the implosion of the Midwest traditional heavy industrial base. And the 1980 deregulation of the railroad industry had spawned new regional carriers. These railroads employed relaxed work rules to improve operating efficiencies and lower transportation costs. To ensure its future, the Soo Line bought the Milwaukee Road in 1985. The purchase paid off with a shorter route between Chicago and St. Paul, new gateways at Louisville and Kansas City, and a larger and more diverse traffic base. It also brought years of deferred maintenance and a mountain of debt. During the next 2 years, the Soo Line consolidated operations by shifting most of its through traffic to the former Milwaukee Road main line. The Soo Line's own tracks became secondary feeder lines, many cursed with light traffic and high operating costs. To control costs on these lines, Soo created the Lake States Transportation Division, an in-house subsidiary modeled after the new regional railroads. But the relaxed work rules that were key to the success of Lake States failed to appear. Pressed for funds to reduce the debt from the Milwaukee Road purchase, the Soo slapped a for sale sign on Lake States in January 1987. The buyer turned out to be a group of investors led by Thomas Powers Jr. and Ed Burkhart, both former railroad officials. Soo Line's agreement for the sale included the railroad, all associated buildings, track, signals, and adjoining property not used for railroad operations, and specific trackage rights for both companies. Not included were locomotives, cars, and a name. Except for 2 former Milwaukee Road lines, a map of the railroad resembled nothing less than the old Wisconsin Central. And so it was. On October 11, 1987, the long-dead Wisconsin Central Railroad was reborn as today's Wisconsin Central Limited.
I think the reason so many people like today's Wisconsin Central is the variety that the railroad offers. The Wisconsin Central has a lot of different locomotives, types of trains they operate, commodities they haul, cities they serve, and a lot of different kinds of lines that they move their trains over. In a lot of ways, today's Wisconsin Central is very reminiscent of the older major railroads of the 1950s that were big enough to have a lot of variety, but yet small enough that you could grasp or understand the whole railroad in one shot. Those would be railroads that we remember, such as the Western Pacific, the Monon, the Central of Georgia, the Minneapolis and St. Louis, the Maine Central. Those railroads were big enough to have a lot of operations and variety in them, yet small enough that you could see what they were about. And that's a big difference from today's Class 1s like the Union Pacific or the Norfolk Southern or Conrail. As fascinating as those railroads may be, they're just so big that it's hard to grasp what they're all about in one shot. The Wisconsin Central is in one region, and it has all that variety in a relatively small confined area, and offers a lot for a regional railroad.
Our story begins on the Chicago subdivision at Waukesha, known as milepost 97.7 in the timetable. From there, we'll head west to DePlainville, where WC crosses CP Rail's Milwaukee-St. Paul main line. Union Pacific's former Chicago Northwestern main from Milwaukee to St. Paul crosses the WC at Sussex, site of one of WC's biggest customers. Shortline Wisconsin Southern joins the WC at Rugby Junction, then crosses at Slinger, an important interchange point between the two railroads. Milepost 147.1 is Byron, a tiny farm community at the top of Byron Hill. 10 miles away is Fond du Lac, the site of a major yard, a car shop, and a locomotive shop. North of Fond du Lac, we'll follow the Neenah subdivision to Oshkosh, where WC has streamlined operations with a regional railroad acquired in 1993, the Fox River Valley Railroad. Then it's 14 miles to Neenah, the gateway to the Fox River paper-producing region, and the end of our on location.
Welcome to Waukesha, Train's hometown. I'm standing in front of the old Soo Line depot here. The Soo passenger train, the Laker, used to stop here, but it's long gone. But the depot remains as the heart of WC operations in Waukesha.
Waukesha is an industrial switching terminal. It's a small terminal. We have a few crews there. We just started some new business there, aggregate business. We're working with Vulcan Materials, delivering rock from Vulcan, Sussex to Grays Lake, Vulcan. And it's been a real good job because we have two trains that work there and they turn the cars around. We have a good turnaround in our equipment.
The Wisconsin Central this year is running mini rock trains from 2 customers, shippers in Wisconsin, to 2 receivers in Illinois. It's been quite a success because of the way we're handling it this year as opposed to prior years. This year we borrowed a concept from our friends in the United Kingdom. We have 1 train that leaves Allenton, Wisconsin and delivers rock to Lethen, Illinois, 1 train a day, 5 days a week. And we have 2 trains a day, 7 days a week that run from Sussex, Wisconsin to Grays Lake, Illinois. So we're moving a total of 7,500 tons of rock per day from Wisconsin down into Illinois. All the train sets are 25-car mini trains. We're using new cars this year also that we purchased from the Canadian National. They're XOR cars that were removed from service in Canada, and they're different than the open-top hoppers that we used last year that had 3 doors on the bottom. This is just a 1-door operation, and it drops its whole load very fast. Last year, the last train that we could run was on December 5th because the rock in the train had frozen up, and it stayed frozen up until springtime. This year, we're hoping that we will be able to operate at least 1 train all winter long. It is a very simple concept, and that is the reason why it's working. It's short, fast trains, and the advantage there is by being fast, they're able to get over the road faster, and they can make their moves faster. By being short, they're able to duck in more places when they have to. So the short, fast trains is one of the secrets to getting this accomplished. The 25-car train set is another secret because the 25-car set can fit at any shipper and any consignee. The train sets do get swapped around. 1 train set can go to any shipper or any consignee. Actually, the idea came about when one of our marketing representatives went over to England this year to view their operations and saw how they did these mini unit trains. In hindsight, it's working so well, we say, why didn't we think of it? Well, why didn't we? This is one of the advantages that we've had with our sister companies in New Zealand and in England. We've been able to give information and new ways to do things to them, and we have learned from them as well.
It's interesting that we American railroad people have an asset that we never knew that we had, and that is that worldwide we were, with an exception or two, we were the only people that were experienced in running profit and loss disciplined private enterprise companies in the rail field. Everywhere else it was a government railroad. There's quite a strong demand internationally for people that can run a private enterprise type railroad, meaning that it earns its revenues and pays its bills, and that's a unique skill.
My name is John Brown, locomotive engineer, originally from New Zealand. We had the chance to come over as a locomotive engineer and work as a locomotive engineer for Wisconsin Central. Now the biggest difference between New Zealand Rail, which is now Transrail, and Wisconsin Central is the gauge of the track, which we operate in New Zealand 3'6", and over here it's 4'8½", which makes everything a lot bigger, especially engine-wise. And also the train sizes. Over here you have huge trains, anything from 100 to 120 car trains. And of course the tonnage-wise is well up there, anything between 9 to 17,000 tonne. Whereas in New Zealand we seem to run the smaller trains and a lot more of them.
Well, I think we have the best employee group anywhere. And I say that now with an international perspective as well. And I'll tell you that we have excellent employee groups in the United Kingdom and in New Zealand as well. But the group here are the tops. They've been with this company for ever since it started 9 years ago, and they continue to set the pace and be the example. We've had management people from Britain come over here, came back and reported in management meetings that the employees were the key, and that we had the most motivated people that they'd ever seen, and people are focused on the task, they're focused on the customer service, and they've simplified what they do to the extent that it's done, it appears easily. Now, in fact, a lot of this came the hard way, and what appears easy today is just the way our employees make it.
If you blink while you're driving on Highway 164, you might miss Duplainville, just north of Waukesha. This is where WC's Chicago sub crosses the CP Rail main line to the Twin Cities, the former Milwaukee Road. And with upwards of 20 trains a day on each railroad, this can be a very busy place.
Until 1989, a Soo Line operator in a tower on the northwest side of the crossing controlled train movements through the Duplainville interlocking. Today, the CP Rail train dispatcher in Minneapolis controls who's on first here. The operator and the tower itself lost out to centralized traffic control, known as CTC. CTC allows a dispatcher to throw switches and clear signals for train operation by signal indication from a machine in an office that may be hundreds of miles away from the tracks. WC also employs CTC to move its trains between Waukesha and Neenah. Granted, CTC is more efficient than block operators and manual interlocking towers, but that doesn't mean the Chicago sub-dispatcher's office in Stevens Point, Wisconsin is what you'd call high-tech.
Well, the machine that we use to dispatch the trains between Fond du Lac and Waukesha was the equipment that was in here when I came in here, and they said they were going to get new stuff back then, so it's quite old. They have problems with the code line and stuff, depending on the weather, and summertime's a good time and it works more often, and of course wintertime you have different problems. But they do plan on putting the new equipment in all the way to Fond du Lac, I believe, beginning part of next year.
The age of the CTC machines at Stevens Point isn't the only challenge facing the Chicago sub-dispatcher. The line handles about 35 million gross tons of traffic per year. Many of the sidings between Waukesha and Shops Yard in North Fond du Lac are too short to handle the longest trains. And a stiff grade that demands helper locomotives on the heaviest trains hampers operations. A tough job? You bet. But who's complaining?
I like it. I like it. It's different every day. You don't do the same thing, 2 days in a row. There's always something new going on, and the time goes by fast. To make the whole puzzle work, that's the challenge. You just have to think it through and think out the whole plan, and hopefully it'll work, and if not, you have to go to plan B. Well, I think you have to not panic, be level-headed, and handle the situation, and just take it as it comes. You can't, be rushing everything, because then that's not going to work. You're going to have to just think things out and not get upset about them, even if the people out on the road are. So at times there are people that are impatient or want to do something, or they don't know that you're on the radio or on the phone, and so they might get a little impatient or think they've been waiting for, 20 minutes to talk to you when maybe they haven't. Some days are busier than other days.
When we first started out, our philosophy was short, fast trains. But success in the marketplace grew those train sizes, and then when we had an operational consolidation with the Green Bay and Western and the Fox River Valley in 1993, the volume just inundated us for a period of time. Now we've gotten out of that by spending hundreds of millions of dollars on improvements, including a new classification yard in the westbound facility at Fond du Lac, lengthened a lot of passing sidings, built other yard capacity at Neenah, and so today our service is pretty much restored to what it was before. But the trains are still bigger. We'd like to get back to smaller trains. A lot of that relates to successful use of new technology, such as engineer-only operations, use of radio-controlled locomotives, all of which are technological improvements that we're pursuing.
This is Sussex, where Union Pacific's main line to the Twin Cities crosses WC's Chicago sub. It's also the home of one of WC's biggest customers, Quad Graphics.
Quad Graphics, I'm the vice president in charge of distribution on a corporate basis. We have 9 different plants. Quad Graphics started in 1971. When we talk distribution, we're talking about any movement that is coming within our plants, product that's going to different plants. Specifically, like talking with, on a railroad basis, we receive approximately 1.6 billion pounds of paper. On an annual basis, Wisconsin Central handles probably about 70% of that. and then the balance of it comes in by truck. We are a printing company, and we print probably about 1,700 different titles. We have a customer base of around 782. The paper comes in, and we produce magazines. We produce catalogs, brochures, magazines such as Newsweek, Time Incorporated, Sports Illustrated. Any supplier that we're using, especially on an inbound basis, of course, we're looking for a consistency. Wisconsin Central has probably become one of the premier railroads. When we're looking to build a plant, we actually look for land that is available that would have a track site along with the Wisconsin Central. Wisconsin Central, even though they're growing extremely fast and probably going through some growing pains on a whole, they've really done a very fantastic job. I think mainly speaking, there is a timeliness. They looked at our operation, they asked when the best times were for the railroad to come here and make a delivery at any of our plant sites, and tried to look at what our production schedule is, and I think we came to a happy medium of what works best. I think the people there really care a lot.
Wisconsin Central's philosophy is to serve the customer foremost, and to do that, we do it with our employees. So that means that we have to motivate our employees, get along with our employees, treat them well, with the object being that they'll treat the customer well. And in fact, that's worked.
25 miles northwest of Waukesha is Slinger, where WC crosses another railroad, the 148-mile Wisconsin and Southern. But the two railroads share more than the name of the state they serve.
Slinger's important because we do interchange with the WSOR at Slinger, and we do some grain business. It's a good interchange. 46 sets out going into Milwaukee. He sets out at the WSOR with the cars that we have out of the yard here. Yeah, it's a turn job. 46 goes into Milwaukee and turns on 47, so it happens all on the same day. I think they have a train that picks up that pickup in the morning and sets out.
Wisconsin and Southern's roots go back to 1978. That's when the Milwaukee Road decided to abandon 140 miles of branch line trackage northwest of Milwaukee, including the line from North Milwaukee to Horicon, Wisconsin via Slinger. The Wisconsin Department of Transportation acquired the lines in 1980 and turned the operation over to the FSC Corporation of Pittsburgh. 8 years later, William Gardner's Railroad Acquisition Corporation purchased the Wisconsin and Southern, nicknamed the Whizzer. Slinger isn't the only place you'll see Wisconsin and Southern on the WC Chicago sub. In 1992, Gardner's company acquired the Wisconsin and Calumet, which operates on a network of abandoned Milwaukee Road branches out of Janesville. Whizzer trains now use WC trackage rights between Slinger and Waukesha to connect the properties.
This is Byron Hill, 7 miles of 1.25% grade. It's the toughest piece of railroad in Wisconsin, all day and all of the night.
The Chicago subdivision meets the Neenah subdivision 60 miles north of Waukesha at North Fond du Lac. But don't look for a station by that name in the WC timetable. As far as WC is concerned, this is Shop's Yard, the heart of the Chicago subdivision.
Fond du Lac, the overall philosophy in the scheme of the railroad, the Wisconsin Central, is that the trains feed to us from places like Superior, Minnesota, and everything comes towards Fond du Lac, and the trains are pre-blocked. We're kind of the bottom of the funnel before it goes to Chicago. And when the trains get here, we grab the big blocks off of them, make them up on a track, and we've basically got our trains made up. Then we have two yards basically here. Our south yard is our load and hold yard where companies have materials that they want us to hold on to, and we keep it at a standard of X amount of cars. If it's potash and stuff like that, we hold it down to 150 cars in that south yard. The eastbound switching, we have a yard on the geographical southern end of this yard. We have crews that switch out blocks that are dedicated as a Fond du Lac block. The big blocks are switched out by what we call a pull-down job on the other end of the yard. They grab the big blocks off the rear of the train when it comes in here and puts them to the various tracks to make up the outbound trains. Now, if you go over to our westbound switching yard, now I should explain eastbound means cars going to the east or towards Chicago, basically, or Milwaukee. Westbound are the cars that are coming out of Chicago and Milwaukee and the various places like that that are going to go back to Stevens Point, Green Bay, Neenah, Gladstone, and points beyond there. What we do is we have a train that'll come into 58 track, and then we start grabbing 20-car cuts off of that train up on the west yard. And the west yard has its own separate lead. So they can switch cars basically for 24 hours. Never stop switching. It's called a production yard. East yard doesn't quite, they can do that quite a bit of the time, but there are some trains that have to leave out of that east yard when they leave. And then we have a pull-down job on this end of the yard that grabs the big blocks off of trains, or the big blocks that are made up off of the switching, and makes up the outbound trains going to the west. The Chicago trains that come to Fond du Lac aren't blocked. They have to be switched, every train. So we handle a lot of cars in this yard. The eastbound switching yard was all WC. And to the old C&W fans, the FVW yard was the C&W yard at one time. And we had a ditch that ran in between them. And now everything's all covered over and it's connected. Everything's put together into one yard. And we have receiver tracks for eastbound trains and receiver tracks for westbound trains and outbound tracks for both of them. We've done a yard expansion for actually the first phase of it was done last August. And that was to allow us to set up this independent lead for switching our westbound trains and to allow us to have more blocks. When a train gets to Stevens Point, it's just the reverse effect that the trains that funnel into Fond du Lac and they have the big blocks going towards certain railroads and we pull them off with our pull-down job. Stevens Point is able to do the same thing with the trains that come from us. It's a real good concept. That's how you move things on the railroad. We also handle, we have a contract with Ore going to Geneva, Utah. Is a load both directions. We connect with the SP in Chicago and they take it out there. Then they unload the train and go over to the coal fields with that train and load it up with coal. And when it comes back to us, we have to bring it into the yard and we stage the trains here and we have a cleaning operation that cleans the coal dust out of the cars so that it can go back up to Superior for reloading of ore. We have a lot of ore trains that go through here. They're supposed to average about one a day with this Geneva contract, and so it bunches up. Sometimes we get 3 at one time, 3 empties and 2 loads in here at one time. And it makes it difficult for switching, but we handle it.
The predominant move in the iron ore business right now is our move that we have in conjunction with Southern Pacific, which is the move from Mintac, U.S. Steel's pellet plant at Mountain Iron, Minnesota, going to Geneva, Utah on the SP. Wisconsin Central has handled that move for the last 2.5 years, and we have a 5-year contract on that piece of business. So that's where we're seeing some of the latest technology in the General Electric, the C44, 4400 horsepower AC locomotives.
Iron ore has been very successful. Although that's an on-again, off-again industry, it's very tied into a cyclical business like steel making, which then is further cyclical, dependent upon winter weather. For example, our big iron ore push is during the first quarter of the year when the lakes are frozen, and so you're looking at a guy that prays for a long, hard winter.
The Geneva ore trains are much of WC's traffic through Shops Yard, but they're more than just a slice of the pie graph that represents WC's traffic base. In a larger context, they represent one of thousands of customers served by the capable employees of Shops Yard.
Our importance to our customer is, first of all, being able to keep track of all the train movements and keeping to our standards so that the customers, when they call in to ship a car, they know exactly when it's going to hit Fond du Lac and when it's going to be moved from Fond du Lac to Marketplace, which is, generally speaking, for us, Chicago. We work really well with the other divisions in coordinating train movements that make good connections. I'll give you an example. We have a train 48 that leaves at 6 o'clock in the morning. Number 10 gets into the yard from Stevens Point. He gets here approximately 2 o'clock in the morning. He pulls those Conrails off of number 10, puts them on top of our Conrail train that leaves at 6 o'clock in the morning. Great, it's seamless service. It's great service. And that's the kinds of things that we're looking at constantly to improve. That's how you keep your good customer base, by doing those kinds of things for them.
The shops in Shops Yard actually refers to the diesel shop and the car shop. Here at the car shop, WC uses a transfer table to move equipment around. Now, the transfer table is actually a relic from the past, but as you can see, it's a very useful one.
All right, here at the Fond du Lac car shops, our basic function is to keep a modern and up-to-date fleet out there. We normally recondition the cars here. That can be anywhere from 20 man-hours to 700 man-hours a car. We'll bring the cars in through the shops, replace what needs to be replaced, and put them out in service after they're painted. We also bring in wreck repairs. We handle all of the wrecks that happen on our property. We've done some contract work here. We've done some work for other railroads. Actually, we're a well-rounded shop. Right now, we're running 100 AC 61-foot guns through the shops. They're coming out of pulp service and going into steel service. I feel we can We can go out and purchase existing cars considerably cheaper. We've become very effective as far as production in the shops. I feel we do an excellent job of reconditioning, and I think we can do it a lot cheaper than buying a new car and putting it out there. In a lot of cases, you can't find a certain car, so you'll have to build new, but in some cases, there's a lot of existing box cars out there that we can buy and bring into the shops and recondition a lot cheaper than buying new. Probably the biggest thing is when our cars are spotted at a customer's door, I think they enjoy the type of car we're putting out there. I mean, it's a clean, fresh painted car, no dents, no rough floors, that type of thing. So I think our customers really appreciate what we do here at the shops. I know my employees are proud of the work they do, and I think it reflects as far as the customer also. You know, they take a look at the cars that they're getting spotted at their door for loadings, and I think it's a much better car than what they're used to.
Like the car shop nearby, the diesel shop is a remnant of the old Wisconsin Central Railroad. Instead of a transfer table, though, the shop here uses a turntable. Now, the turntable is disappearing generally from the railroad scene of today, but that's not likely to happen at North Fond du Lac anytime soon.
Here at the North Fond du Lac shops, we call this our heavy repair shop. We have the overhead cranes, engine changeouts, the generators, the AR-10s, the trucks, the motors, all the stuff that needs a crane. The wreck repair is done. Most of that is done here in Fond du Lac. But if it's heavy, it comes to Fond du Lac. Locomotive service and maintenance, as far as the customer, we have to have a reliable locomotive to serve the customer, and that's the main reason we are here, is to serve the customers, to get the freight moving. The downside is it's a delay for everybody. They got to park that thing somewhere, get it off on a siding. There's a delay there. That customer was not serviced in that day, and that's where the problems start. I've seen a big turnaround as far as how we think. It's what's made this railroad successful is servicing the customer. Back in the, I might say, the old days, they were not our priority. Yes, get the locomotive out, but from there, nobody really cared too much as to what went on next. We want to put something out there that's going to make a trip there and make a trip back, and our goal is to have a 90-day period where that locomotive can go out and work and come back, and we are striving to reach that goal. We're not there yet, but we're going to get there. The age of our locomotives, we've come a long way since we started. We've got a fleet of 105 SD45s. The electrical, the wiring, it's all old. With the microprocessors, getting a lot of the old mechanical contactors, a lot of that problem has gone away. Our switch engines, they're an older locomotive. They all need tender loving care, what we call the preventive maintenance. They're worked. They work very hard. We've got a lot of switching in our yards, and they get used. We'll have draft gear pockets that are worn out. They're old, but if you maintain them, they're going to run forever. They're a diesel. The ACR Jeep 7s and Jeep 9s have all been rewired. Some of them have what we call the BC engines in them yet. There's a little high maintenance on that end of it, but that's just seals and gaskets and you're back to business. But the crews like them. We lowered the nose on some of the ACRs, made more visibility. So they're a good running locomotive. They're reliable. The 4000s, it's an older locomotive. They like them for switching, road, whatever. The only problem I would say we really had is when we went to the single shoe brakes on them. The braking power is not as great as what it was with the double clasp type brake. Like I say, it's an old diesel, but we maintain it. They're good runners. The Jeep 30s and the Jeep 35s were all our old Soo Line locomotives. If I'm not mistaken, they're 1960s built. The wiring is old, brittle, tired. The biggest problem with our Jeep 30s is with the Elco trucks. That's the big headache right there. They're a beast to work on. The Elco motors, it's very time consuming. They got to the point where they weren't reliable anymore. So the 3000s, if I had another 50 of those, my gray hair would go away. They're a very good running locomotive. But when we picked up the 3000s, we at that time put some good stuff in them. We went through the engines, all new power assemblies, bearings and everything. They're good runners. They're very reliable. They get the job done. The SD45s and the F45s, what we call them, they're a very comparable engine. The only problem that we have, your accessibility to work on the engine. You're under that roof. It's much easier on an SD45, but otherwise it's the same thing. Cab's very nice, very roomy in the F45s. I think the visibility is better on an SD45, but that's just my thinking. Our 20-cylinder engines with the SD45, they're notorious for breaking the cranks. That the design was not what it should have been. But we still have problems here and there with the cranks going. What we've done is we have downrated those to 3,200 horse. We get a lot more life out of that engine itself. So price is right, yes, we would definitely buy more SD45. The people that are working in this facility now, it's real easy to compare. From back in my old days, there's more pride, a lot more pride. You can see that, you can sense that. The productivity, it's at least 4 times, 5 times greater than what it was. Every mechanic in this shop, the trades, that's gone. We can do electrical, we can do mechanical, we can do the pipe fitting, whatever. It's hands-on with everybody. It's not, I'll wait for the pipe fitter, I'll wait for the electrician. I can go and do it. The craft line, that's one of the big things that I sense has been a real plus for us. What's unique about this railroad is when this started out, we had Milwaukee Road mechanics, Chicago Northwestern mechanics, Soo Line mechanics. Being here all our life with the old Soo Line, it was, you did things this way. You get a kid off the Milwaukee Road, he'd show you something, you'd say, well, my God, there's a lot easier way to do this, and you just showed me. A lot of that went on right from the get-go, which was good.
Well, I found one thing about railroad people worldwide, and that is that they're very proud of their industry, and they're proud of what they do, and it's the only thing they want to do. Most railroad people, if they lose their jobs, they spend the rest of their life trying to get back into the railroad business. And that's why we were able to pick up a lot of people early on that lost out on the Class 1s. And those people tend to be self-starters. Now, the management has to learn to give them the tools and then get out of the way. Learn to not overmanage and encourage them, but don't smother them.
The Fox River, the FRVR, GBW locomotives, they were the offcast. When the C&W left, they needed a friend. They were tired. A lot of things wore out. The maintenance that it would take to get these back in shape, it's not feasible to stick that kind of money into them. They will end up being scrapped here. The ones that we have stored, they're high dollars to fix what's wrong with them. Turbos, cranks, generators, they will go to the boneyard.
Another group of Outlander locomotives preceded the Fox River Valley Jeeps to the boneyard, 6 RSD-15s. Nicknamed alligators because of their long, short hood, they were built in the early 1960s by Alco. But after Alco closed its doors in 1969, the Gators became orphans. They spent less than a year hauling FRV freights until the railroad fobbed them off on a sister railroad, the Green Bay and Western. Although GB&W owned a fleet of 16 smaller Alcos, the Gators were too heavy for the bridges, so they wound up stored at the railroad's shop in Green Bay. WC hastily sold off the Alcos when it bought both railroads in 1993. Five Gators were scrapped without ceremony, but in the fall of 1996, the WC delivered one survivor to the Union Pacific at Butler Yard, UP's former Northwestern yard on the northwest side of Milwaukee. Lettered for the Green Bay and Western, the last Gator was headed for preservation at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois. At Oshkosh, the Neenah subdivision crosses the Fox River at milepost 172.8. With the purchase of Lake States, the WC inherited a main line built in the middle of Division Street in Oshkosh. You've heard a place described as little more than a wide spot in the road? Well, for many years, the main line through Oshkosh was more than that. In fact, it was the road. Granted, Division Street residents had a grand view of President Bush when the WC hosted the POTUS campaign re-election train in 1992. But that didn't compensate for the headache of operating at 10 miles per hour down the middle of a city street lined with homes.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you. Hey, kids. Have a good Halloween. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you, officers. Thanks. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
By the fall of 1996, change had come to Division Street. Sure, railroad crossings still were in evidence, but new signs showed the crossings to be abandoned. The street looked like it had been torn up for sewer work, but a closer look revealed piles of wood cross ties and severed rails, the remnants of WC's main line.
Oshkosh is a real success story of cooperation between the railroad and city government, of working with state and federal authorities to get funding to eliminate one of the line segments through Oshkosh, concentrating all the train traffic on what was the former Fox River Valley track. By doing so, we eliminated a large number of crossings through the town, a lot of annoyance and of going through basically people's front yards. So we end up now with a route that has far less curvature in it, and we get down to one single swing bridge over the Fox River.
The POTUS train of 1992 isn't the only special train WC has operated since its inception. The railroad regularly operates business trains that offer customers a first-hand look at the railroad. Milwaukee Road 261 has powered some of the most exciting excursions hosted by the WC in recent years. In 1992, the Northern Type steam engine was pulled from retirement at the National Railroad Museum in Green Bay by North Star Rail, a group of investors led by Steve Sandberg. With the blessing of WC President Ed Burkhart, the WC hosted 261's break-in run between Minneapolis and Chippewa Falls in September 1993. Since then, the Big Alco has run on WC a number of times, including these trips between North Fond du Lac and Burlington, Wisconsin, as part of Burlington's 1994 Chocolate Festival. Our on-location wraps at Neenah, Wisconsin, the junction with the Shawano sub to Gladstone, Michigan, the Fox River sub to Green Bay, and the Manitowoc sub to its namesake city on Lake Michigan.
Yeah, Neenah, we are industry-oriented. We run about 25 switch engines and locals, mostly for the paper industry. Our yard here at Neenah, we run probably between 600 and 1,000 cars in and out of this yard per day. Generally, it empties out in the morning with the locals leaving and fills back up again in the evening when all our locals come back. Pretty much day after day, the same type of operation that way. It's a small yard, but just recently, within the last week or two, we finished a big rehab job on the west end of our yard. New track alignment, all new switches. It's a lot better than we had before. Didn't make the yard any bigger, but it makes it much more efficient for the number of cars that we put through this small yard. This yard was started out as a industry type yard, and I don't think it was ever meant to handle the amount of traffic that we put in and out of it, but we got a fairly smooth operation, but what comes in has to leave, and so we get the trains picking up as much as they need to keep the yard fluid. For my contact with customers is generally when they have a lost car, I'll get a call on that. We trace them down, do whatever we can here to get the customer satisfied, expedite moves and such things as that. Occasionally, if there's a problem with a track or something, they'll call and I'll get them hooked up with the right person to take care of their problem. So it's generally, for the most part, my job is troubleshooting with the customers, although not limited to that, but by far the biggest portion.
We're trying to come up with a good competitive product for the customer. I mean, it means on-time delivery, good equipment, good local switching, and good prices. And that says it all. It's not rocket science. It's pretty basic.
Well, my experience with Wisconsin Central has been about over the last 14, 15 months since I joined Appleton Papers. And the one thing I can say about the Wisconsin Central that really stands out from, I guess, my experience with railroads in the past is that they walk the walk, they talk the talk. They are a very quality-oriented railroad, which really just lines up with Appleton Papers' principles about quality and the way we view and work with our customers. The one thing I'll say about the Wisconsin Central, they're responsive, they are price competitive, and they're just a refreshing change in the railroad industry. One of the things I'd say about the Wisconsin Central that I say really sets them apart from the general perception of railroading is that they're more like a corporation than they do like a railroad. They run it like a business. It says there's a bottom line. There are customers. They realize that some customers, most of the perceptions are, with the railroads, we got you, you're going to ship on us, and that's it. Wisconsin Central doesn't take that posture. Wisconsin Central allows us to utilize them in the role where otherwise the business would go on trucks. So, of course, it helps us all around. They benefit, of course, through the revenue that they receive. We benefit through the fact that we can keep our costs so we can remain competitive in our marketplace. Generally with the WC, I say primarily removing the base stock rolls of paper, the Harrisburg. One of the problems we'd also encountered was water damage. And in looking into it, what we found was just a difference in the cars. When we were using the box cars with the sliding doors, that's where we really were encountering the water damage. So one of the things we required of the WC is on our movements that we needed to have the plug door cars. It provides a solid seal. It's almost like your refrigerator. It's the closest thing, almost like, say, having a reefer. Once that door is closed and sealed, it's virtually waterproof. Didn't take long. I mean, it was less than 2 months. We had everything that was delivered to our facility for outbound shipping was a plug door box cars.
We get a switch list every morning from the mill at the yard office at Neenah. That's where we start out of, is at Neenah. And that switch list will tell us what cars they have to have pulled from the wood yard, which are empties, and then which are the loaded cars that they want spotted. And we and then we come down here to the south side of Kaukauna, take them up to the wood yard, switch them out. Plus, we also have to switch out the paper house, which consists of taking out loads there, which either go back to Neenah, or they'll go to out east, plus the tank tracks, which are basically different grades and kinds of slurry mixtures for now paper making. Our job is to service basically applicant papers that combine lines. It shows to the company, PwC, that the mill is important enough for them to have here a separate job that just services the mill. Our basic job is to now come down here from Neenah and service the Locks mill, of which I think we do now a pretty good job. Well, I think we're a customer representative because if we give them good service, the more better service we give here an outfit, the better off it is for us. It'll now generate more business. But though, if we didn't give them good service, then they can always tell us we're going to go with the truck. But though, I think that if the railroads give enough customers good service and on-time service, it can't hurt. It can only mean more business. If you damage the merchandise, and they can trace it down to a particular switch screw, the mill, if they wanted to, they can go to management and say, this switch screw, they're too rough with our merchandise. So they should have to handle the merchandise, like they're handling eggs. Yeah, they're especially the finished product. Because the finished product is what counts.
Waukesha to Neenah is the guts of the Wisconsin Central. It's the highest density line that we have. Today it's handling about 35 million gross tons over it in the course of a year, which is very high volume for a single track railroad. Now I would see over a period of time continued capital investment in that territory, with quite a bit of it being double tracked. For example, we're looking at a double track project right now between Shop's Yard and Oshkosh to give us the capacity that we need. I see continued growth and lots more business that we can be handling. Although it's not going to be the huge, quick growth that we've seen in the past. It's going to come slower. The acquisition area has all kinds of potential, both nationally and internationally. But we never want to lose our focus on running this railroad the very best that we know how. And we're not going to lose what we have here to concentrate on the growth somewhere else. Because if we did, we'd soon find that the growth had turned negative here, and then we'd be following the path of the Class 1s that once used to populate this territory. Staying sharp, staying customer-minded, sticking with our employees. Those are fundamentals that aren't going to change and never should change if we're going to continue to be successful.
Thank you all.
Hi, I'm Paul Schneider, and I'm the producer of Trains on Location Railroad video series, and I'd like to welcome you to the program. Because you're a rail fan, I thought you might enjoy seeing some previews of other shows in the series. So let's take a look.
Well, what I like about the curve is the fact that it has trains on it, and it's beautiful scenery up here, and you get some real good fresh air every now and then, get out of the city, and the people that you meet up here from all over the place, different walks of life and stuff, and just have a good time up here along with other people.
This is one of the toughest I've ever seen, and knowing how to handle trains, these engineers, and especially the helper engineers here, are extremely good in the Altoona area handling trains over these mountainous regions. Like I said, it takes a special type of skill, and not only, as an engineer, you not only run the equipment, but you have a sense, like a sense of feel with your pants, so to speak. You feel that operation with your train. Just by this, what we used to call the seat of your pants operation.
Well, this next program is Cajon Pass. I'm very proud of it because we won an industry award for it. And it's a combination of black and white photographs that tell the history of Cajon, a lot of very exciting video footage we took out there on 2 separate trips, and also some very compelling and in-depth interviews with the railroaders up there who keep the Santa Fe, the UP, and the SP humming through this very dangerous and yet very beautiful mountain pass in Southern California.
Santa Fe has some quality dispatchers. They've got some good people in there that do a good job, and when certain dispatchers are working, you know, there doesn't seem to be any discrepancies between the 2 railroads.
Did our crew get up to Victorville for the helpers yet?
I do not believe so.
I have a harbor train that's leaving West D Yard right now that's going to need them.
Appalachian Conquest is a show that's been very popular with model railroaders, and for good reason. The CSX Corbin division offers many things that model railroaders find fascinating. A wide variety of motive power, steep mountain grades, great scenery, and some very interesting online industries in the form of coal mines, both big and small.